Are you on it?
I'll get ready to go in just a minute. 3, 2, 1.
The midterms are over, but some things remain the same in America. Things like black folks catching hell from the police.
The guy in the black shirt's not being 100% cooperative.
Colin Kaepernick's protest and Black Lives Matter raised awareness. But where's the change? Just being black raises your risk of being killed. It doesn't matter your profession or status.
The video doesn't match the story that we've heard.
The sister of a Morehouse grad is trying to make sense of his death. She says her brother, Chinedu Okobi, was unarmed when police confronted him in San Mateo, California.
The evidence is clear. Being white reduces your likelihood of dying at the hands of the police, no matter how whites act or behave.
Treat me like a black person! You're gonna get sprayed! You're gonna get...
The latest high-profile police killing involved a young father who was the good guy with a gun. That doesn't seem to matter or apply to black folks. Joining us tonight to discuss the still increasing number of police killings in America of unarmed black people is political science professor Val Atkinson. You can join us by calling toll-free from anywhere in the U.S. and Canada at 833-255-7171. You can also send us a tweet at FireFilms. We want to hear what you have to say about police killings or anything else that's on your mind. Stay tuned. You're watching The Deal.
And good evening and welcome to The Deal. I'm your host, Ed Clark. A lot going on again this week. We're lucky again to have with us Val Atkinson, professor of political science who lives over in Holly Springs, North Carolina. I'll bring him in just a moment. Obviously, we took off last week. We had a marathon show, election night. We stayed up really late, tried to go to the end, and we're just pleased that, we're getting good response on the program, and we hope to continue this, for months to come and maybe years to come, and it'll get better each time. We want you to join us tonight. The number to call is 833-255-7171 if you want to participate. We're going to be talking about a number of things. Obviously, in the opening, we talked about the increasing number of police killings, but there's plenty more in the news to talk about, and for us to talk about that, I'm going to bring in my partner in crime, Val Atkinson. Welcome back to The Deal.
Thanks, Ed. I really appreciate being here. And as you said earlier, there's a lot more to talk about in addition to what we're calling police brutality and racial incarceration.
Right.
We haven't been on since the election night. So I think a good place to start might be to talk about some of the races that were critically important, some of the high-profile races that we watched and didn't know at the ending of our show how it would come out. We need to talk about that, which most people know about. But I'd like to focus on, if I might, why some of the races came out as they did. And I'd like to start with the Georgia gubernatorial race, the Florida gubernatorial race, also the Florida Senate race. In those races, race meant a lot. Let's take Georgia for an example. Georgia is 31% black, and it has a huge mega black population center of Atlanta. Florida is about 16% black, and they are spread out almost evenly across the state, with the exception of Broward County and in the other southeast portion of the state. But Mississippi is a little different, and I'll talk about that in just a second. But if Florida and Georgia could get within a half a percentage point of winning and require runoffs and those kinds of things, it bodes well for Mississippi. Mississippi is 37% black. However, Mississippi doesn't have the high concentration of African American in these high population centers like Atlanta, Tallahassee, Miami, and Fort Lauderdale and Orlando and many other places that are highly populated with African Americans. So it's going to make it a little bit difficult when Senator to be, I like to call him, Espy, makes his run in the runoff to become the first Black senator to take seat in the United States Congress since the first Black senator. A lot of people don't know this history.
Right.
But the first Black senator was from Mississippi, Herm Rebel. And of course, he sat there. That was before the 17th Amendment. The 17th Amendment took away the authority of the states to nominate and appoint senators from their particular states and put it before an election where all of the citizens of that state could elect who they wanted to represent them. So legislators appointed people prior to that. And that's how Mississippi at that time had more African Americans, as we call them today, than they had white people. There were two states that way, Mississippi and South Carolina. So they had to do something to keep Black folks from outvoting them and turning the whole state over to Black people. In rush voter suppression, in rush all of these Black codes, literacy tests, poll tax, whatever you want to call it, anything to keep Black people from legally voting because they would have been in the majority, they were in the majority, they would have taken over government. So just a little history on what Mike Espy is trying to do. You go from 56% population right after the Civil War down to 37%. A lot of dead bodies in the Mississippi River and hanging as well.
Let's talk about some of the controversy over that seat in Mississippi. It's a special election, and so the person who wins would only serve for 2 years and then have to be up for a vote again. But the candidate on the Republican side has said some controversial things. Talk to me about what you know about the Republican candidate for the seat there in Mississippi.
Well, the Republican candidate for the seat in Mississippi is trying their best to make this a racial issue. They know that this is the way to win, is to make all white citizens the new brown church, the new Gestapo, the new SS, and tell them it's up to them to uphold the valor of white people. And you need to go to the polls and do like they did in Georgia and stop monkeying around with the possibility of electing the wrong type of person. So they're trying to make this a racial issue. And right now they're doing pretty good. So we'll see. What we'll see is how many good white people will join Black and brown people to stop this crazy shenanigans of racial elections called democracy in the United States of America.
Well, back over in Georgia and in Florida, we saw straight out voter suppression in the case of Georgia, where we saw the Secretary of State, who's not a governor-elect, he pulled out every stop he could to try to keep Stacey Abrams from winning, and he did keep her from winning in the end ultimately. And it still was a very tight race, as well as the race in Florida where Donald Trump had to come and visit multiple times to help Santos to win. What does that portend for Florida and Georgia maybe in 2020, in the 2020 elections? Are they purple states for sure now? And then is there anything that we can do about the voter suppression efforts that were in both states leading up to those elections?
Well, first of all, the voter suppression laws that are on the books now have very little chance of coming off the books before the 2020 election. Remember, we have a very conservative Supreme Court now, and that's where all of these cases are likely to end up. So nothing's going to change. We have a split Congress. The House is going to be Democratic, and the Senate is going to still be controlled by the Republicans. As a matter of fact, they've gained a couple of seats. So nothing is going to happen now to stop that voter suppression. What needs to happen in the future, if Democrats can ever take back the Senate, that's the big deal in 2020, more so than the presidency. And in 2020, we've got to take back the Senate. If we can take back the Senate, it doesn't matter who the president is. We can pull a Mitch McConnell and don't let him nominate any people to the Supreme Court. We can not only impeach that president, we can remove him from office. We can not only take a look at voter suppression, but we can pass laws. And with 2/3 majority, we can override a president's veto. We can pass laws to reinstate Section 4 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act into that act, which was the protector for years, ever since 1965, for people pulling out things like voter ID and all the other shenanigans that's been going on to suppress the vote. Had we had Section 4 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act, Mr. Kemp wouldn't be governor today, simply because it would have to go to either the Justice Department or a 3-judge panel in Washington to make the decision as to whether or not those 53,000 votes that he was holding under his coattail should have been released. Mm-hmm. And that would have been far, far more than enough to win the election for Miss Abrams. So, I can name you 3 or 4 races right now that were attributable to the smashing of Section 4 of the 1965 Voting Rights Act. So until we get that straight, we can look forward to states like Georgia and states like Florida and states like even Alabama again, although we had some success there, Alabama and Mississippi, all over the Deep South. They will continue going down this path of voter suppression because they know they don't have the numbers. And the only way they can continue to win elections is through voter suppression and gerrymandering and those types of illegal activities. It's the only way they can win. But surely, slowly but surely, their advantage of gerrymandering and voter suppression is losing its power. And the big test, again, people, I want to start hollering about it right now. The big test is going to come in the U.S. Senate races in Congress in 2020. We can take back the Congress. I think we can hold on to the House. We got 37 vote margin right now. I think we can hold on to that. And if we can pick up 3 or 4 seats in the Senate, we can take that over. And if that happens, we're in good shape. You remember in this race, Ed, there were only about 10 Republican senators who were really in a fight to hold on to the Senate, because most of the people who had to run for re-election, 24 of them, they were Democrats. And so next time in 2020, it's going to be just the opposite. There are going to be far more Republicans running for re-election than there are Democrats. And a lot of them are going to be in states that they are in trouble. And I expect that if we have the same kind of fervor and outturn that we had in 2018, if we have that same fervor and turnout in 2020, I predict we'll win back the Senate at that time. Then everything changes. Everything changes.
Right. Well, I want to talk real quick about North Carolina, because North Carolina had some amendments on the ballot, constitutional amendments, and one of them had to do with voting, a voter ID, and it wasn't tied to a specific law or policy. It just said that the legislature would have an opportunity to write that policy. How did that pass in light of the fact? Well, was it just that it wasn't written? It was written in such a way to fool people. How did that pass?
I think I'd give the credit to. I have a neighbor that called me. I won't say who or how close they were, but they needed some counseling on what the voter ID legislation meant and why the Republicans were doing what they were doing. And I shared with her, all my advice and sage recommendations. And I don't know how she voted. I didn't ask her. But for her to come to me and ask me that question, it told me that the conservative Republicans had been successful because this woman touts herself as being a white female progressive. And it told me that the Republican conservatives had been successful at getting at the hearts and minds of people that they normally can't get at to tell them there's nothing wrong with this voter ID. I mean, it's not just for Democrats, it's for everybody to do. Why are the Democrats the only one yelling about it and those kinds of things? And they have enough people on the right and in the center who think that, I don't want Mexican immigrants or whomever coming in here and going down to precinct number 42 and casting a vote, and then going over to precinct 83 and casting another vote. And at the end of the night, they've voted 5 times. And we don't know if that's happening or not, or what. And voter ID is one way to kind of put a hamper on that and stop it.
Right.
And everybody ask, what is the percentage of voter fraud cases that you've found to give credence to what you're doing? Is this a growing trend? Are there thousands and hundreds of thousands of voter fraud cases happening every year? Show me the evidence, show me the proof. But it doesn't matter to some because there are a lot of white people out there, Ed, that thinks that there are going to be people of color hurt from this. Because first of all, if they're not fraudulent, they don't pay enough attention to detail. And they don't have the ID, they forgot to bring it with them to the poll, or there's a discrepancy in what the voter registration files have and what they have on their ID. They know that people of color are going to be dropping off like flies when it comes to voter ID because they can't produce it, they can't find it, they lost it. It doesn't say the same thing that it did. It's not legible because they had it in their pocket and they pull it out and they got cornflakes all over it and stuff like this. And you see it, but you can't read it. And they are depending upon this to stop us from voting because they have convinced themselves, Ed, and I say again, that if they play the game of democracy fairly, they can't win. Mm-hmm. They can't win. They're looking at the year 2045, some say 2050, some say 2060, when they will be strictly in the minority and can't alone by themselves dictate what happens to the United States of America. They are dreading that day, and they are doing any and everything they can right now, legally or illegally, they don't care, to stop that day from coming to pass.
I want to remind the folks you're listening to The Deal tonight. In with us is Val Atkinson, as always, our resident political scientist, letting us know exactly what's going on in the world. We'd like for you to participate, so here's an opportunity. 833-255-7171 is the number if you want to join us tonight. Remember, if you call in, turn off the device you're looking at us on. And tonight we're on YouTube, streaming tonight on YouTube. So if you're looking at us tonight on YouTube, you want to call in, use your cell phone or a landline, but go ahead and turn off whatever device that you're using to watch us. You'll be able to hear us, and then you can go back to the stream. You'll be able to hear the show as it's going on. 833-255-7171. Tell your friends, your neighbors, your dog, your cat, anybody that we're out here every Tuesday night at 8 p.m. And it's a continuation of what we do on the radio, and then we're hoping to get more people involved in this. And obviously the holidays are coming up, and people are preoccupied with other things. So you'll also be able to watch us. So tell folks that they can always go to YouTube and watch us, the repeat, or you can watch the repeat on the website as well, thedealwithedclark.com. And every day I have a new column out there. So you want to take a look at that. Val, let's wrap up, the election. the Democrats win the House. They make some inroads by winning some governorships around the country. They won, taking over some state legislatures that they had previously lost. Overall, do you call it the blue wave that people were talking about, or is it just a good enough? Did it matter that it was or wasn't a blue wave?
I say it was a blue wave, Ed. Just because we didn't win 2 or 3 high-profile seats doesn't diminish the great gains that were made in the House of Representatives, the great gains that were made in certain states. We can talk about North Carolina in particular, which I know we will in a few minutes. But the big kahunas here was the House of Representatives. We know we needed 23, 24 seats to take that over. Many pundits and historians were thinking about somewhere between 24 and 30. Very few thought it could be high as 37. And that's where we are right now, 37 seat advantage for the Democrats in the House. So that's made it a blue wave right there. And what Republicans are trying to say is that because we didn't win the gubernatorial race in Georgia and in Florida, that we somehow lost, and they did a great job. Even your 45th president is trying to take advantage of that.
I was going to say that. Your president wants us to think that the Republicans won.
Right. He's trying to say he should take all of the credit for Santos winning, DeSantis winning in Florida. But that's not the case. Because he takes no responsibility for 37 seats lost in the House.
Right.
Takes all the responsibility for anything winning. So that's just the way he's been all of his life, is to do that. But it was a blue wave, and we're going to need that same blue wave, maybe even one bigger. And we have a lot of time to work on it. This job may be easier, Ed. I hate to use that word, because people stay home if they think it's going to be easy.
We don't want that to happen.
Right. But the reason I say that is that the Senate is not run, gerrymandering does not affect the U.S. Senate. So if you got 25 red state Republicans running, they're going to have a lot cut out for them to hold on to at least 22 of those seats. And it's going to be difficult to handle because you got a guy in the White House right now that's leading everybody down the wrong road. And people in 2020 will be voting against either he or Pence and whatever Republican happens to be running. I can't see if the best chance they have, the Republicans have to hold on to the Senate is if Pence is at the top of the ticket. Mm. Then they could really inspire a party loyalty.
Right. But let's talk real quick about I think Donald Trump probably is questioning Pence's loyalty. Heard a little bit about that this week. I'm surprised that Mike Pence is. I'm just not sure what his deal is. Do you think there's even the remotest possibility that Mike Pence thinks that Donald Trump actually cares for him and wants him to be around? I just feel like Pence has sold his soul to the devil here. He spent all his career talking about being a Christian and being serious about, people doing the right thing, and then he's hitched his wagon to this guy who's amoral. He's vulgar. He's been married multiple times, which is not, people get married multiple times, but he's associated with prostitutes. It's a proven fact he paid off people. And had that been Barack Obama, and certainly when Bill Clinton was president, people didn't like what happened with Monica Lewinsky. What do you make of Mike Pence and his seeming willingness to forgive everything? He didn't get just a mulligan in this case. he got the whole match, and not just one hole. Pence is giving away the house.
Well, first of all, we have to understand that Pence is not affected by moral logic. He could care less about it. He's one of those evangelicals that he turns the Old Testament and the New Testament upside down to figure out a way that he can still be satisfying to the evangelicals, still be satisfying to the Republican base, and say that he was a good Republican. That's all he cares about, is being listed as a good Republican. And I think he could care less what Donald Trump thinks of him, or whether or not he thinks Donald Trump's going to help him out or hurt him or whatever. He's looking at his tenure, his legacy as a Republican. Did he do the right thing in office so he can stand up at the final moment and say, I did the best I could with what I had to get done what I needed to be done? Donald Trump doesn't come in his decision making, because you'd have to assume that there's some logic there someplace. And there is none when you're dealing with Donald Trump. And I want to talk about that a little more when I talk about the Saudi Arabia deal. I mean, people even counting the money. How much is a journalist's life worth if you throw it away for
apparently nothing?
Yeah, I mean, but you can't use logic in the same sentence that you do. You kind of try to look at and judge and evaluate Donald Trump. You can't do that. He's not that kind of a guy. And you run the risk of doing it. I've heard one journalist have an idea, and his name escapes me, and I apologize for that. He's wondering, how would Donald Trump react if the media boycotted him? Stop talking about him. Stop having him on every time, or at least a clip of him, and make their whole whatever. I tell you, that is the one thing that would drive Donald Trump crazy. That's why he tweets every night. He's got to have attention. He loves it. He loves that he is manipulating the media, that he can make the top story tomorrow morning anything he likes for it to be. All he's got to do is go out there and spit out one or two words and say that, and then next thing, CNN, MSNBC, Fox, everybody is talking the same thing. The president has said, and that contradicts. Please, and Donald Trump knows what he's doing. It's just like now with the Ivanka piece.
Well, I wanted to move on to that. Let's talk about his daughter Ivanka and her emails.
He's trying to change the subject now. It's getting a little hot, and he wants to talk about other things. He brought up the whole idea of the wall again, and now he's talking a little bit about whether or not the Mueller investigation is being handled properly, and anything to get off of Ivanka. That's his baby. And when the water gets close and the water gets hot, Donald Trump is an expert at changing the subject, and the media is his foil. They allow themselves to be used because they want ratings, and because ratings mean money. So they allow themselves to be used, and that's what he's doing. I mean, he can come right out and say, we're going to lose several $100 billion with the Saudis if we go against them in this cooped up murder thing that the CIA is talking about. This is CIA. And he's saying we're going to lose billions of dollars, and that's going to affect your gas prices and that sort of thing. I mean, he is an expert at changing the subject and making it so, regardless of what happens, you have to agree with him.
Yeah, I had promised myself I wasn't going to talk about the president that much tonight, because we do want to cover our main topic, which is more police killings, but it's almost impossible not to go through a day without, talking about the president, Ivanka and her email troubles, which seem to be much worse than anything that they could have accused Hillary Clinton of. And then the whole Jamal Khashoggi killing and his seeming unwillingness to criticize the Saudis over it. The one last thing I guess I wanted to talk about the president is his fight with Admiral William McRaven, who led the capture of Osama bin Laden and the killing of bin Laden. And also, he was in charge when Saddam Hussein was head of the Joint Chiefs or whatever it was at the time. He was pretty high up in that as well, and involved in Saddam's capture. My point is that this guy was recognized by the military as being one of the very best. He was a Navy SEAL at one point, and now Donald Trump thinks he's the worst person in the world. And at the same time, Donald Trump talks about how he supports the military. Let's wrap up the whole Donald Trump thing. Tell me what this feud about McCraven is all about. I have my suspicions that it's about covering up all the other things that he's messed up, like the California wildfires and Ivanka's emails and all that. What's your take on it?
My take on it is that Donald Trump hates any news that is not favorable to and for and about him. And the admiral is just talking about trying to praise the legacy of servicemen who made the ultimate sacrifice. And he went through and named quite a few of them and talked about how they should be revered and how Trump wasn't doing that. And there's no excuse for not attending, the grave sites and the memorial for troops who left their lives in foreign lands and made great sacrifices. There's no excuse for that. And then he goes on to talk about how Trump has not really done the things that he promised he would do for veterans, and how he's played golf for 159 days and didn't have time to attend a memorial service one day. And he's just trying to say, from a military standpoint, that this guy who evaded going into the military himself got 5 deferments so he would not have to go, can now stand up and he has the nerve and gall to talk about the late John McCain was not a hero, to talk about the people who lost their son in Iraq was not a hero, to talk about the unknown, the soldiers in the unknown tomb and that kind of thing, that they may be heroes.
Right.
It's his base that are full of military guys. I'm going to tell you that right now. His base are full of military guys, retired or just veterans. And they support that. They support Donald Trump on that. Donald Trump can tell them that most of those guys were not heroes, and they buy into it. You know why? Because these guys are the new Brown church head. They're the new SS. They're the new Gestapo. The SS, Gestapo, and Brown church, they were all military before Hitler. And they got out and they formed this new organization that was for the Third Reich, but they had military backgrounds. That's who Trump supporters are now. They are the new Brown Church, Gestapo, and SS. So although they may be retired military, spent 4 or 5 years in and categorized themselves as a veteran, they are the new Brown Church, Gestapo, and SS. Watch them. A lot of these people, KKK, Sovereignty Commission, White Citizens Council, Southern Manifesto, all of these groups encourage their memberships to join the military or the local police department to get training that they need for what they consider to be the ultimate war. That's the race war. So that's why the military is full of people that support Donald Trump, even with what he's talking about. And veteran organizations are full of people that support Donald Trump because they believe in that 100%. And that's why it was so easy for Donald Trump to castigate the admiral. I mean, he's not going to lose any points for that. He's going to gain points. People who served under that admiral are now with Donald Trump saying the guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, that's a shame. I want to remind the people that you're looking at the deal tonight, at the deal with edclark.com. We're also on streaming on YouTube tonight. And I hope you're picking us up there on YouTube. You'll be able to catch the replay on YouTube. You'll also be able to catch the replay on the website. It normally goes up on YouTube right away after the show's over, and then on the website you can pick it up usually the next morning. We have it redone so you can see it the next morning. Pass it along to your friends. Let people know that we're here on Tuesday nights. We'd like for you to join us, 833-255-7171. I know election night we had phone problems all night, which of course that would happen, wouldn't it? But we got all that worked out. So if you have some trepidation for not calling in because of the phone problems we had during election night, those are all fixed. Those are working. We got the phone lines working. So if you want to join us, 833-255-7171. Val, I want to cover two other things before we take a break. One is there were 17 black females elected to judgeships down in Houston, Texas. That was astonishing. And then there were 7 black sheriffs elected in North Carolina in counties like Wake County and Durham County and Mecklenburg County. Explain to me what happened there. How did that happen? Was that part of that blue wave, the people coming out to vote that got those people elected?
Absolutely. Now let's start with the 7 sheriffs elected in North Carolina. These were the 7 largest counties in the state, and they were highly populated by African Americans. Forgive me if I leave out something, but they run from Mecklenburg to Wake to Guilford to Cumberland, Forsyth, and then I'm missing 2 others, Durham, I believe, and one other, maybe New Hanover, I'm not sure. But these counties have very, very large African American and Hispanic population. So as people came to the poll, and they were coming to the poll to vote for their congressperson, their board of county commissioners, and many other races that existed, they knew a vote for a Democrat was casting a vote against Donald Trump. That's what this election was. It was a vote against Donald Trump. So in those counties that had the high African American and Hispanic population, they had really a straightforward advantage. Here in Wake County, for an example, Mr. Baker, the challenger, outpolled Donnie Harris, who was the incumbent, Harrison, who was the incumbent by 10 percentage points. That is unheard of, that an incumbent would lose by 10 percentage points to a never ran person before. And it happened again in Durham County, in Guilford County, in Mecklenburg County, Forsyth County. And it just to tell some of our other listeners who may not be familiar, Durham, of course, is in Durham County, but the big city in Wake County is Raleigh. The big city in Mecklenburg County is Charlotte. And in Guilford County is Winston-Salem. In Guilford County is Greensboro. And in Cumberland County is Fayetteville. So that gives you an idea of some of these huge cities that produce all the weight in these particular counties. All of them elected 7 African-American sheriffs. I expect that to do wonders for the whole business of police brutality and racial incarceration in this particular state.
Yeah,
because I'm hoping that the African-American sheriffs will say, hey, guys, it's a new sheriff in town. Mm-hmm. and say, hey, because even Baker already has said, Ed, which you are aware, that we are going to have one set of rules, which is everybody thinks that's the way it should have been all the time. But he is a 28-year veteran of the Wake County Sheriff's Department before he retired. And he knew that there was a set of rules for the good old boys and a set of rules for everybody else. And he said, once he takes office, there's going to be just one set of rules for everybody. And I look forward to, and we're going to have him on our Sunday talk show in the very near future. And I look forward to sitting down and chatting with him about some of the ideas that he has or that he wants to put in place to make sure that there's one set of rules and everybody has to get to them.
And we need to get him on here too, because I think, people don't know how around the country, I know other people from other places watch this show. People in California and Iowa that I know they've watched the show and don't realize how big Raleigh is.
It's a very, very big city, but I wanted to finish up, Ed, if I could say something about the 17 black judges before we went on. Now, I just want to be clear about this, and somebody can correct me, but I'm not sure about the name of the county that Houston is a party to or listed in. And I'm sure I'm going to get several calls from some of my former students saying I should know that. But at any rate, these 17 black female judges were elected from the county, over the county. So, and the largest municipality within that county is Houston. So most of them are going to be based out of the city of Houston proper. But it goes further than that, and it takes on the suburbs of Houston all throughout the county. There were 17 African-American female judges, which makes it sound very, very intense and potent to say 17 African-American female judges elected in the Houston area. But what it shows you is that, again, same with the sheriffs that ran in North Carolina, is that people were looking at a way to show their displeasure with Donald Trump and all that he represented. And so anything that wasn't Republican, they voted for. Mm-hmm. And my one word to Democratic operatives and strategists, whatever you do, let's have some of the same thing for 2020 plus a little bit more, because some of the voter suppression measures that Republicans have working on, they've gotten some of it passed, some of it right here in North Carolina, some of it in Pennsylvania, some of it in Texas. So it's not going to be an easy road, but you're going to have to do some things because you got two sets of new voters coming online. Those turning 18 and 19 in 2017, those turning 18 in 2018. They've never voted before. Mm-hmm. So when it comes time for them to vote, let's make sure they know who to vote for. Let's get the Parkland kids involved. Let's get Black Lives Matter involved. Let's get whoever we need to get involved to convince those new 18-year-olds coming online that they need to vote. Go back to the new 18-year-olds that voted and that turned 18 and 16 and 17. Make sure they come back again. This wasn't a one-time thing. So you got 4 years worth of new voters there, plus holding on to all of the older voters that have voted several times. You got to get them back too and motivate them. So you got your work cut out for it, and it starts right now.
Yeah, it certainly does start right now. What I want to do is want to take a small break, and when we come back, I want to switch subjects to our main subject, which is the recent killing of Jamel Robertson up in Chicago. I want to talk about that and a couple other things. In the meantime, folks, you can call us 833-255-7171 is the number. We'd love for you to participate. Don't be shy. We won't bite. We really want to hear what other people have to say. We do this all the time, but we do this, so you have a chance to say what you want to. We're going to take a small break. As a teaser here, we're going to listen to Malcolm X, and he's going to talk about how black folks were dealing with the police in 1963. This is from 1963. Malcolm X, and then we'll be right back.
Don't scare Negroes today with no badge or no white skin or no white sheet or no white anything else. The police the same way. They put their club upside your head and then turn around and accuse you of attacking them. Every case of police brutality against a Negro follows the same pattern. They attack you, bust you all upside your mouth, and then take you to court and charge you with assault. What kind of democracy is that? What kind of freedom is that? What kind of social or political system is it when a black man has no voice in court, has nothing on his side other than what the white man chooses to give him? My brothers and sisters, we have to put a stop to this, and it will never be stopped until we stop it ourselves. They attacked the victim, and then the criminal who attacked the victim accuses the victim of attacking him. Yes, this is American justice. Yes, that's right. This is American democracy. Yes, and those of you who are familiar with it know that in America, democracy is hypocrisy. Right. Now, if I'm wrong, put me in jail.
Wow. Malcolm X, 1963, Val Atkinson. Those words resonate today. I mean, you could make that same speech at a Black Lives Matter rally right today, because a lot of times that is what happens. The police get off. They use the trope that some black person made them scared, or or they were being attacked, and then all of a sudden the black person who's the victim, who's dead, ends up being the person that that we're looking at and vilifying, and not the person that killed somebody. So let's talk about Jamil Robinson. He was a security guard trying to raise money for Christmas for his a 1-year-old child, and had another child on the way. He was holding a suspect, waiting for the police, and within moments of them arriving, the police shoot and kill him. And people on the scene say they were telling the police that this is a security guard. From the reports I saw, he had security on the back of his shirt, had security on his hat, but they still shot him. Why does that still happen in America today, Val Atkins?
It is the way new police officers are indoctrinated into the system. And we can take a look at training all we want. It doesn't matter because they can invite people like you and I, Ed, to review their training. And they have all of the modules set up and all of the training exercises there for you to take a look at. And they all say the proper things. But that's nothing compared to the old rusty 20, 25-year veteran who pulls all of these little rookies aside and tell them, look, when you go into the hood and you meet this 6'4" buck that's been arrested 5 or 6 times, he got scars all over his face from baton hits, and he still's not afraid of you. And if he puts his hand on you, he's going to break your little scrawny back. So sometimes the best you can do if you want to go home that night, you have to put one right in the middle of his head. Nice 45 from a Glock. That is training. That's what these guys go to the hood with. And a guy right out of training academy who's never lived in a black community before, never had black friends, don't know anything about black people, he is afraid of black people. And now they give him a badge and a gun and a uniform, and the unofficial trainer tells him that all of those guys out there that are 6'4", 275 pounds are your enemy. They will break your scrawny back if you don't get them under control. And the first thing you have to do when you ride up on a group of 6 or 7 black guys, they're standing in front of a convenience store, jump out of your car and show them who is in control. Yell loud, require them to get down and kiss pavement, put their hand behind their back. Anybody who disagrees or won't obey, hit them with your nightstick, pull out your gun, and threaten to shoot them. That's for starters. And then from then on, once you get them under control and get them afraid of you, then you can handle the black community. You'll ride up on the next convenience store and you'll see them start to scatter and run because they know what is next. Once you get them to that point, you got them under control. You'll find some smart ones every now and then that think they know as much about the law as you do. And every time you ask them a question, they ask you one back, or they pretend you are not, you don't have the authority and the power that you think you do. The best thing with them is a nice slap across the cheeks in front of the teeth with your nightstick and show him who's in charge. Him with his master's degree or you with your high school diploma and a nightstick. Show him who is in control, okay? That is what is going on with these police departments, Ed. Right. And then we wonder why things happen the way we do. Malcolm was right. That's what they do, because they are told that if you give a perp or a person a command and he refuses to obey that, that is prima facie evidence that he has broken the law because he refused to obey your command. And you are authorized at that point to do anything you want to him to bring him under your control, because you are there to gain control and not to listen to all sides of the story necessarily. So you get cops like that going into the black community, Ed, and you get people who understand and know the law and says, hey, I haven't done anything wrong. Why are you asking me to do that? The next thing you know, he's on the ground bleeding.
Right.
You know? And we got a problem. And if you try to resist any further, the next thing you know, your mom or your aunt or your sister is being called down to the morgue to identify your body. And then another piece of turns out on the internet, talking about this wonderful man with this small child trying to work 2 jobs, security written on his back, holding down a suspect, and get shot by the very police performing the action that they should have been performing.
Right. Well, Val,
and that's the way it's going to continue.
Yeah, I got a email from a friend just the other day out in California of a story of where it proves that it doesn't matter who you are or whatever. I want to play a clip for you, and let me see if I can get it queued up. And you tell me what you think about this. It's a story that's been, I think, underreported that a lot of people haven't seen. Let's see if we can get this clip up.
Back, a Morehouse grad killed during a struggle with deputies in California. The 36-year-old father died after getting tased by law enforcement, and now his family is demanding answers.
The video doesn't match the story that we've heard.
The sister of a Morehouse grad is trying to make sense of his death. She says her brother, Chinadu Okobi, was unarmed when police confronted him in San Mateo, California. Deputies there say Okobi was spotted walking in and out of traffic before they used a taser on him numerous times, and he died. A report in Reuters last year found more than 1,000 people in the U.S. have died after police stunned them with tasers. 9 out of 10 of the victims were unarmed, and 1 in 4 suffered from a mental illness or neurological disorder.
Do police officers know how to engage with people who are in crisis? And do police officers give black men the same dignity that they allot to anybody else?
Okobi had a history of mental illness, and it's not clear if he was on his medication at the time. Family believes race played a factor in his death because surveillance video and witnesses tell a different story than police.
Well, police have not said too much in this case, but the DA's office says the death investigation will take a couple of months.
So, Val, so there, you got a Morehouse man, and then all the accounts that I've been reading is that the DA suppressed, giving this information to the family for almost a month. And when they finally showed them video, it was a compilation of videos from different sources. And none of them purported to show what the police had written in their police reports. This whole thing of the police having an opportunity to hide the evidence and not show the video right away, and even in North Carolina where we are, I think recently a law passed saying that they could withhold video from the public. Should there be a national standard on releasing video in cases like this? And even if it were, would it make any difference?
Well, the answer to your first question is yes, there should be a national standard for that. But the answer to your second question is no, it won't make any difference. Simply because they'll find another way to support the officer that's alleged to have done something to one of the citizens that he's sworn to protect. Until the whole culture changes around police work and where they are working and who they are working with, things are not going to change. They need to start taking a look at having police officers to police the communities from which they come. And if we need to go out and recruit, make sure you're recruiting people that match the vacancy list that you have. If you have a shortage of people working in gated communities, and that gated community is 98% white, why not put a couple of white people over there? That's fine. That's what you should do. But if you're recruiting people to work in Southeast Raleigh or West Durham, North Carolina, where the population is well over 95% black, why don't you have some black officers over there? Mm-hmm. Not only African-American officers, not that live in North Raleigh where you do, Ed, or out here in southern Wake County where I live, but that grew up in Southeast Raleigh, that probably know some of the people that are there, so that when they ride up on this 7-man group in front of the convenience store that I talk about all the time, they can say, Junebug, you and Pookie got to get out of here. We're not going to have any of this. And the guy's been knowing Junebug and Pookie for 15 years.
Right.
He's going to get a different response than this white guy who rides up on them and trying to tell them who's in charge and who the boss is, because he's scared to death. How can you protect and defend somebody that you are scared to death of? We don't do that in the animal kingdom. If a guy is scared of dogs, he won't get hired to be a dog walker because he's afraid of them, you know? If he's afraid of other animals, he won't be hired at the zoo to feed them. I mean, it's the only time we allow that kind of thing is in the police hiring and placement of officers, that they are starting and looking for trouble when you place a person in a community that doesn't know that community, has no relationship with it, and think that everybody that lived there has committed a crime, is committing a crime, or will be committing a crime sometime soon. And he is the police officer. That can't work. So we can have all the training we want. We can make all the new rules we want. But until we change who is out there policing these people and what their caring quotient happens to be, you know, and who are they caring for? Every one of those people that live in these communities that I'm talking about here are taxpayers. They may not be paying property taxes, but they're paying a tax that's higher than that. They're paying consumption taxes, which everything they buy has a tax attached to it. And without those consumption taxes that they spend every quarter that they make. Without the consumption taxes, every municipality, county, state, and the nation would be in fiscal disarray, because we are a consuming nation. And it's those people out there who are doing all the consuming that's making this nation go. It ain't the guys on Wall Street, because they make a lot of money, but they don't spend it.
Right. Hey, Val, you know what? We're almost at the top of the hour. It went by just that quick, and I hope I didn't miss any callers because I got preoccupied with our conversation. But if you did try to call in, remember we'll be back next Tuesday, and we'll continue this conversation. We'll talk about a lot of other things. There's always so much going on, Val. And sometimes my head's just spinning, and I don't want to get so preoccupied with a 45-year guy in the White House. I wanna pull away from that sometimes. We're gonna do a year in review show, so I'm gonna challenge Val Atkinson to come up with his top 10 stories of the year. I'll do my top 10. We'll probably do that the second week in December. So we'll do the year in review show next week. It's no telling what's going to be in the news. I do want to continue this discussion because I did collect some other material that I did want to share with the viewers. And so maybe we'll share some of that. Obviously, there'll be other news. In the meantime, Val, thanks again for being with us on the deal. And hopefully you'll be back next Tuesday night at 8 o'clock. Folks, invite your friends, your relatives, like I said, your dog, your cat, whoever. Tell them to come in and watch the deal. The deal with edclark.com is where we are. You can also pick us up on YouTube. We're always on YouTube, so if you go to YouTube, you'll be able to catch any of the repeats of the program. You'll be able to catch the repeats of the program on the deal with edclark.com. There's a new blog post every day. The new one for today won't be up until about 10 o'clock, but I'll meet the deadline. I try to have them up before midnight every night. So in the meantime, we really appreciate you coming in and spending time with us on the deal. Come back next Tuesday night at 8 o'clock on the deal. I'm going to leave you again with this Malcolm X clip because I think it puts everything into context. Share this with your family and friends and talk about it with all the folks that you love. And we'll see you next week on the deal.
Don't scare Negroes today with no badge or no white skin or no white sheet or no white anything else. The police the same way. They put their club upside your head. and then turn around and accuse you of attacking them. Every case of police brutality against a Negro follows the same pattern. They attack you, bust you all upside your mouth, and then take you to court and charge you with assault. What kind of democracy is that? What kind of freedom is that? What kind of social or political system is it when a black man has no voice in court, has nothing on his side other than what the white man chooses to give him? My brothers and sisters, we have to put a stop to this, and it will never be stopped until we stop it ourselves. They attack the victim, and then the criminal who attacked the victim accuses the victim of attacking him. Yes, this is American justice. Yes, that's right. This is American democracy. Yes, and those of you who are familiar with it know that in America, democracy is hypocrisy. Right. Now, if I'm wrong, put me in jail.